My parents compelled me to give my sister my $5,000 inheritance so she could start a business. Now she's using pictures from her launch party to make me feel bad about it, so I've decided to get even. My older sister was compelled to take the money that I, 17F, had received from my grandma a few months before in order to support her entrepreneurial aspirations. Connie, my older sister by 6 years, has relentlessly picked on me for no apparent reason and has bullied me throughout my life. She really does bully me just because she can. She is confident in her ability to continue getting away with it. Beginning when we were quite young. My parents had warned me not to overreact, and any time I voiced my displeasure with Connie's treatment of me, they would dismiss my concerns as too sensitive. At this point, I understood that my parents were only gaslighting me into thinking that my elder brother's actions were typical and that I should not be concerned about it. I can assure you that Connie was the worst of my older siblings. She was not kidding around when it came to her treatment of me, and the hurt she caused was anything from harmless. She was constantly attempting to bring me down with her nasty comments when we were kids, and my parents would tell me to be quiet, but they would never confront her, even though she was the one causing me to cry. At least it was only verbal that was terrible in and of itself. I didn't understand Mom didn't simply despise me until this incident happened when I was 13 years old. Connie brought along a couple of her friends when my family and I went to the beach since she really loved me. Things were especially bad for me because her friends appeared to despise me as much as she did. She was 19 years old and had returned from college for the weekend, so she and her pals were spending all their time together. They must have all been dealing with the same kind of mental illness, because they hated each other even though they hadn't done anything wrong. Regardless, whenever I was in their presence, they would disparage me, make scathing comments about me, and simply laugh. I had had enough and had gone to sit alone on the pier, feet dangling over the ocean, to take a break from them. Suddenly I felt someone shoving a plastic bag over my head and then kicked me in the back, causing me to fall into the water. It was a few minutes before I regained consciousness and understood what was happening. As I played in the water, I looked over and saw my sister and her pals laughing and running away. As soon as I regained consciousness, I swam as quickly as possible to the shore, removing the plastic bag from my head. Fortunately, I am a competent swimmer. After I returned to my parents and began sobbing over the ordeal, my sister and her friends attempted to make it seem like a light-hearted prank, but it was only the beginning of what was to become the most distressing event of my life. My parents shared my laughter and reassured me that I was being overly dramatic since I had a history of being a wimp. They assured me that nothing bad would have happened to me, and my dad even made a joke about how my swimming lessons had paid off. They might have suffocated me to death because the plastic bag they used to cover me was quite little. Additionally, I could have drowned if I hadn't regained consciousness and removed the bag from my head in time. They still seemed to think it was hilarious, even though a lot of things could have gone wrong. Even though I knew my parents had a favorite daughter, and it wasn't me, that episode stuck with me, and I resolved then and there to treat none of these people like family. Studying diligently was my sole objective. I had no choice but to distance myself from these folks once I got into college because I just could not afford to trust them. I have kept my distance from Connie ever since, but now that I have to live with my parents, I can't exactly be mean to them either. Even though I didn't want to, I had to give up the money I had inherited 3 months earlier because I had to act nice with them. Now I know why. About 3 months ago, we finally received the inheritance from my grandma, who was my dad's mother. She passed away about a year ago. She left my parents the house she had lived in and most of her money, while Connie and I each received $5,000. I also received a sapphire ring that belonged to her because I had said to her before that I liked it, and she had joked that I could have it after she died. The sum was substantial, and I intended to put it aside for the future. However, my parents informed me that Connie was embarking on her own business venture and wanted to gather as much capital as she could get her hands on. They had already begun to assist her. Now they were relying on me to continue their support. Since it was her company, I didn't see any reason for me to chip in. It should be noted that she has consistently shown me nothing but cruelty throughout my life, and now I am suddenly supposed to lend a hand to this individual. After a few days of bickering, my dad threatened to stop paying for my college expenses and even forbid me from returning home unless I helped her out. I flat out refused. I ended up agreeing despite my fears because I was already so irritated with the scenario. The decision was likely poor, but I was feeling really stressed out and didn't believe it would be beneficial to continue arguing with these folks when I had so much work to do studying for my finals. I agreed to give up my inheritance so that my parents would stop bothering me. I needed some peaceful time to myself. They were letting me retain the ring, after all. My grandmother had merely described it as the ring with the blue stone in the will, so I understood what she meant. Fortunately, I was also smart enough to keep quiet about the stone's true nature and its enormous value, so no one knew it was a sapphire. To end the disagreement, I relinquished the $5,000 that my grandma had given me. Now, 3 months later, I've received acceptance to the college of my dreams. A couple of weeks from now, I will begin. I am really fortunate that my parents have fulfilled their promise to me and will be covering all of my expenditures, including tuition, as well as covering my move out of state. Since I no longer need to stress about how I will pay for college, I suppose it was not such a terrible investment to part with my $5,000. I feel terrible about what I did a few days ago, because my sister finally opened her store and had a launch party to celebrate. Everything had been going swimmingly for me, and it is still going swimmingly. People she befriended in college are now her coworkers. Those were the girls who, for some reason, thought it was funny to toss me into the water while wearing a plastic bag. Even though the three of them now own a huge shoe and accessory company, selling mostly simple items, they are certain they have accomplished something groundbreaking since the things I have created are so adorable. By the way, do you have enough evidence to support their claims, so I can immediately tell that their friends will be buying from them? If given the opportunity, my sister could have gone on to have a prosperous professional life. She smacked me in the face with a plethora of launch party images, so I did something. After my parents departed, I found out why I hadn't gotten an invitation to the event. They explained that it was adults only and that they couldn't bring me because I was 17 years old. It was all nonsense. But I was determined not to go. But the next day, Connie sent me a plethora of party images, along with a text message explaining that she wanted me to relive yesterday's fantastic celebration through the photos because I hadn't been able to make it. Then, for the sake of ego, she bragged that she would have been completely helpless without me, talking about the $5,000 I'd given up to be with her. For some reason, that really irritated me, and as soon as I noticed the man in the images, I rushed to my gallery to check my suspicions. I couldn't tell if they were still dating just by looking at the photos. He was just in the background of a few of them. Despite his weight gain and receding beard, I recognized him as her ex-boyfriend from high school. This man, who we'll call Simon, began seeing her the moment she turned 18, despite the fact that he was only 25 years old. He, of course, was a fellow alum of our high school. Connie was far behind him when he graduated. When she was 16 years old, they became friends on the internet. His proposal came on her 18th birthday, which I found quite creepy, but Connie saw as a romantic gesture, but luckily my parents were mature enough to tell her that they didn't approve of her going out with someone who was waiting for her to turn 18 while he was still in his 20s, still creepy. I suppose she disobeyed their wishes and kept dating him behind their backs, even though they did not want her to. He was an employee at his dad's business, but they broke up after only 8 months of dating. The breakup was necessary since he was planning to move in with his uncle in Wyoming and work as a farmhand after allegedly being caught stealing from the company by his father. After she returned home to plead with my dad to seek a job here instead of giving in to his parents' demands and getting himself shipped out to Wyoming, she was upset. Our parents then learned that she was still seeing him, and she broke off their relationship. My dad, though, would have none of it and insisted that she vow he would never speak to her again by blocking him everywhere she went. One minute Connie was pleading with our parents to let her stay with this bad boy, promising that he would be better. The next minute my dad was yelling at her for not listening and for being involved with this guy, and my mom was just sobbing. It was a very chaotic day at our house. I was instructed to remain in my room and not come out that day, but I overheard his name being tossed around quite a bit, so I decided to track him on social media. When someone causes such a stir in your family, you tend to remember their face rather clearly, so I resolved to exact revenge on Connie the moment I spotted him, skulking in the backdrop of her images. Since my parents and Connie didn't consider me family, they were quite candid when discussing the company I was a member of. Although my own parents were simple to persuade, I was cognizant of the fact that her friend's parents had shown to be more resistant. I thought it would be tough to find other investors because they are all so dim-witted and unintelligent. But anyway, I knew for sure that her mother, a single parent, was the last one to be skeptical about risking so much money on a store selling nothing but shoes and accessories, so she was the one who mostly persuaded her parents to invest in the business. In order to avoid getting into a poor investment situation, her daughter should get a job, work for a couple of years, get some experience, and then come back to this. However, Connie and her pals were hell-bent on making this work. So, when Connie was at home, she had been griping about this woman quite a bit. Eventually, they decided to make do with what they had for now and ask their third friend's mother to invest in the firm if it took off. Their current situation necessitates that they achieve phenomenal success in the initial months of their firm in order to secure the agreement they had devised. They could only afford to stay afloat for a few more months until they would surely want more funding unless, by some miracle, their business took off. Since they were a small-scale operation and the fashion industry is notoriously difficult to break into, it seemed implausible that they would break even so quickly. I had a feeling this secret could be the final straw for the remaining parent, who has been resisting up until this point. I contacted her using a sham account, claiming to have urgent news about her daughter's business and requesting that she give me a call. So long as she used Facebook's call feature and I didn't give her my number, I was able to maintain my anonymity. She seemed unsure about the legitimacy of the situation for a few hours before she finally called me, but I suppose her curiosity won out in the end. After that, I filled her in on everything I had observed, including the identity of the man I had noticed in the background of the images. At first, she didn't trust me, but I eventually convinced her that my role was to merely issue a warning. She was then free to decide for herself whether or not to continue investing in the company. I ended the call independently, emailed her some old photos of Simon and Connie, and then let her make the call. Things have been really intense since the day after I made that phone contact, so I guess she chose to back out, and even told her daughter to do the same. Connie has been phoning our parents in an effort to persuade them to speak with the mother who reneged and persuaded her to rejoin the group, but no one is aware that I was involved in any way. Her pals are understandably furious with her for keeping this information from them. It turns out she's back with Simon, but she lied about his name to make him disappear. Our parents are also rather unhappy with her because of this. In a nutshell, she's in a bad spot since everyone she knows is furious with her. I wish I could relax and take it all in, but I can't. I realize how much this company meant to her. And now I'm starting to wonder whether my actions were slightly inappropriate, and if I was a bit too possessive. I overheard our parents venting their disappointment just a few hours ago. They were so furious that they were contemplating pulling their financial support from her company as a result of her betrayal of their trust. This was a first for her, as they rarely become angry with her. This isn't making me feel wonderful in the way I was hoping it would. In retaliation for the childhood bullying I endured at her hands, I would propose that she try to dissuade a possible investor from funding her firm. First update, I want to thank everyone who took the time to reply to my post and offer suggestion. I suppose you could be correct. I'm being really responsible by not talking about what I did, even if I may have felt too much guilt to enjoy it, for the simple reason that my parents would expel me from the house in an instant if they discovered my involvement in this. Also, there will be no obstacles for them to accomplish that, as I will be turning 18 in a few months. I really can't afford for that to happen because I'm depending on them to cover my education bills. A week has passed since my post, and things have taken a turn for the worst for Connie. Her mother, who had previously backed out of the arrangement, managed to persuade her daughter to do the same, leaving them with just each other. However, her other friend is furious with her and wants a 60/40 split of the company shares because she no longer trusts Connie after learning about her secret boyfriend's theft from his father's firm. She had presented Simon to them as this guy she had been seeing for a few months after meeting him on a dating service. Even though nobody believed her anymore, she persisted in clinging to that story after her friend's mom exposed the truth. She went so far as to claim that the photos were doctored, suggesting that someone was trying to cast her as a liar. Therefore, she has been dropping by our parents' house nearly daily. They have been berating her for her actions while simultaneously offering assistance. They meet with their lawyer every night to discuss how to prevent her from losing her stake in the company. If they can't settle this dispute soon, they may have to shut down operations altogether. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I've decided to stop giving this any thought for the time being. Because nobody is paying attention to me anymore due to Connie's predicament, I am free to come and go as I want and do anything I want, which is the only positive aspect of the scenario. I appreciate how it has deflected attention away from me. My parents don't speak to me either, and even when my friend Connie comes to visit, she pays me no mind because she is preoccupied with her own problems. So far, this is how I'm enjoying my last few weeks at home before heading off to college. Honestly, I don't mind spending more time at my friend's place than at my own home, if I don't return home for a couple of days, because I don't have to answer to anybody about what I do throughout the day. No one will even notice, not even my parents or Connie. I just want them to stop bothering me until I'm prepared to go to college. This is the one positive outcome of the whole ordeal, as I mentioned before. I'm also crossing my fingers that my parents' decision to pay for my college fees is unaffected by this issue. Something that came to me while I was writing this post but hadn't thought of before. If it occurs, I'll be in a jam, but at least I'll be able to console myself with the knowledge that Connie's situation is even worse. Revision 2. So, it's been over 2 weeks after my initial post. I thought I was safe because nothing had happened to me until last week, but now I'm not so sure. Anyway, a few days ago, I suppose the woman I had contacted finally caved to the pressure and revealed to Connie how she had learned about this previous relationship, though she withheld certain information. The only way she found out, she informed Connie, was when she got an anonymous phone call along with a few pictures. Connie has decided to stop trying to disguise the fact that she knew and was seeing him. She has no intention of ending their relationship, because by this point everyone is smart and knows that she met him in real life and not on a dating app, And it's clear that I was the first person she considered when she learned about the anonymous phone call. I was unlucky to be downstairs when she dropped by yesterday. I had already planned to meet up with a friend and was about to depart. However, the moment she spotted me, she barged into the home and shoved me with all her might. I lost my footing and my cool, and I pushed her back. She proceeded to yell at me as she seized my hair, stating that she was certain that I was the one who had made the phone call and that I would face consequences for my actions. I was trying not to exhibit my anxiety because I was afraid she would see through my facade and find out the truth. I was determined to keep my cool and pretend it wasn't me, because I had only ever met her friend's parents once at a lunch gathering a few weeks before they opened the store. I became angry and began yelling at her, telling her that it wasn't me and that I didn't know who to talk to. I pretended to be as credible as possible when, in reality, I was lying through my teeth. Our parents stepped in after a few seconds of us yelling at each other to get us to separate. However, Connie insisted that she and my parents search my phone and computer because she did not believe a word I said and because she was certain that I was the one who had ruined her hopes of a successful business career. I knew this was coming, so I mentally prepared myself. However, I still had a tantrum since it would have seemed suspicious if I had simply consented to it. My fears were unfounded, though, because I had removed any trace of my identity from every device I had used to make that anonymous phone call. I had constructed a Facebook account to contact the mom of her buddy, but Connie thought I was calling from my personal number. I have since deactivated the account, so she was completely incorrect to begin with, and she and my parents continued to be unsuccessful after combing through all of my social media sites. She went into a full-blown panic and began ranting at me when she couldn't find any evidence to support her accusations that I had told her friends about her past with Simon. She said that I had intentionally erased all of my gadgets and that she knew I was responsible. I confronted her. She lacked the authority to lash out at me, claiming that she had gone insane due to the impending loss of her business. When the chaos subsided for a while, she broke down in tears. I was beginning to think I was out of trouble when my parents decided to have a conversation with me. They confirmed that they hadn't found any evidence linking me to the leak, but they still believed Connie since she seemed so certain and no one else could have heard about it. Despite the fact that they had seen Simon at the party, they couldn't have been the ones responsible because they didn't identify him. Since Simon was in the backdrop of the photographs that Connie provided me to irritate me, it was clear that I might have retaliated. So, it's just me. And then, to my horror, the very thing I had anticipated was transpiring. They informed me that they were ending their agreement to pay for my college expenditures regardless of whether they could discover evidence or not. I was completely alone at this point, and they clearly wanted us to stop arguing. After that, it was my turn to start sobbing and yelling, but no one paid attention to me because I wasn't Connie. After an hour of pleading, yelling, and crying with no answer from them, I retreated to my room, locked myself in, and began writing this update as a distraction. My grandmother left me a sapphire ring, and I could sell it to pay for college, but I doubt it would cover all 3 years. Just a couple of weeks remain till the payment deadline, and I just cannot risk anything. Therefore, I'm contemplating getting a student loan and asking a family member to be a co-signer. Selling the ring might cover the first semester, but I have no idea how I'll pay for the subsequent semesters. I'll have to come up with a plan someday. Hey, a lot has happened since my last post, which brings us to post 3. A month has passed since my last post, so I'll just give you the rundown of what happened. Just a few days after my last post, I packed up and left my parents' house. There was no longer any need for me to stay in touch, especially since they weren't going to pay for my college tuition. I said goodbye to my old home and set out to live with a buddy. I had previously spoken with her about it, and she had graciously offered me to live with her and her family. Upon spending a few days with her during her gap year, she and her parents informed me that she had no intention of attending college and instead intended to begin working for her dad's business. I could use the money from her parents' college fund for the time being, though. Even though I was hesitant to accept, her parents' long-standing friendship with me and their assurance that it would be just like sending their own daughter to college won me over. Even though I know they don't demand repayment, I will make sure to pay them back. I honestly couldn't say no to an offer like that, so I accepted. Even without selling my grandmother's ring, I am currently on college. Sincerely, I appreciate my friend and her family. Things didn't work out for Connie either. She sold all of her interests in the company, and now her pals own it. She had to pack it in and go since it was clear no one could trust her anymore. My parents were powerless to stop her no matter how much they tried. Since she came up with the idea, she's understandably upset about it. However, I suppose she should be relieved because I really doubt the store will succeed moving forward. Since we have severed all communication, that is none of my concern. My current priority is to plan for the future.